Tyranids and the people that play them are what they eat. And I can tell you had an extra helping of sexy beasts this morning. Speaking of sexy beasts, we're going to go over some awesome Tyranid unit combos, as well as a secondary guide and which adaptive traits you should be taking. Do you like intimidation factor and annoying the shit out of your opponent? Then look no further than the Mawlock. So at 125 points, this guy will have your opponent saying,
"Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?"
So this spiky serpent is one of the best distraction Carnifexes in the game. And this is coming from a faction that has Carnifexes. This guy is so annoying, he's hard to deal with, he's got so much health, and he deep strikes within 9 inches. You can get right up in your opponent's face and make him have to deal with this worm. On top of deep striking 9 inches, if you go Jormungandr and you choose the Obsec monsters, this dude's a 5 model Obsec that can just pop up on your opponent's home objective and say, "This is mine now." It's an awesome unit to use for engage on all fronts or behind enemy lines. So I'm going to go over his special rule, because I think the reason why people don't use this guy enough is because he has a novel that you need to read in order to understand his special rule. But the simple terms, what you do with this guy is you place him in deep strike at the start of the game like normal, but during the first turn you're going to place a little marker down. So this marker is going to go anywhere you want to, and it works as like an orbital bombardment stratagem kind of works. So at the end of your next movement phase, everything within 6 inches of that little marker you put down is going to take D3 mortal wounds on a 3+, and it works even better against big hordes of things. Then the Mawlock is placed within 12 inches of the marker, but also outside of engagement range. The key thing is here is within 12, not fully within 12. So you have a gigantic reach that you can put this guy in, and he can just pop in anywhere and move block. He can do all kinds of things. After he's come in, you just simply exist. He's not going to kill anything. Don't expect him to kill anything. He looks like he might kill something. If he does, that's amazing. But you are just a big monster-sized speed bump. So this guy is a little marker that he places that does the mortal wounds. It does the mortal wounds in the movement phase, which combos really well with biovores that can also do mortal wounds in the movement phase. So if you guys are fighting Abdomen, the fucking destroyer like I am, this is a great way to do some mortal wounds outside of normal combat phases. Before I move on though, I just want to read you this guy's stats. So he is 14, this is 125 points, remember. 14 wounds, toughness 7, 3 up save. He's -1 to hit in melee. You always give him the rattle, so there's a good chance he can turn off rerolls completely. If you're feeling super fancy, you can give him 25 points for a 4-up invuln. I don't really recommend that because he's just kind of there to die. 10 points can give him toxin sacks, so if he does manage to get in combat, his tons and tons of attacks that he has do a little bit more. Because I mean, this fucker's got 16 attacks. So if you're Leviathan, 10 points to give him transhuman. That one I usually do recommend. And then the Zoanthrope imperative to give him the 4-up invuln on the turn he comes in can make this guy really hard to remove. Normally when I run him as Jormungandr, and I run him as the Obsec one, and that's fun to use. So if you like the Mawlock and you want the big Mawlock, the Trigon just isn't big enough for you, there is the Trigon Prime, and this guy might be one of the candidates to replace the Reaper of Obliterex Hive Tyrant.
Would you like to know more?
So to run this combo is going to cost you 185 points. It is cheaper than a Hive Tyrant, as well as the 2 CP, but you give this dude the Seer Hive relic. So Seer Hive makes it so all hits automatically wound. I believe it's only infantry though that it works on. Then you give him heightened senses to reroll hits, because for some stupid reason, Trigon Prime, even though he's an HQ, he hits on 3s. As just a bonus, if you're feeling cheeky, you can pay 1 CP to put 2 units of 3 warriors into reserve, and then pay an additional CP to bring in a unit with the Trigon when he deep strikes in. So if you need to do something like Spore nodes or just, retrieve Nephilim Beta or something like that, you can pull that off. Also, the Tyranid warriors can show up with them, fire their gun for Shard Lure, and give that Trigon Prime a 3d6 charge on a deep strike. Also, if you just did the warriors with the Trigon, you can use that to just score instant behind enemy lines. So he also has the funniest Hive imperative. So this guy makes it so any of your monsters that can do the death throws, they explode on a 3+ instead of a 6. So you can, if you know you're going to have some stuff die, you can take some things out with you. This is a great one to use too in combination with the Mawlock. Unlike the Mawlock, this guy does have a gun. It's 8 shots, strength 5, AP 2, damage 1. Altogether, this guy's going to be getting 12 attacks in melee that will reroll hits, auto wound, AP 3, damage 2, and then like I mentioned, he's got the -1 to hit in melee, turn off rerolls, and because of his relic, he gets fight first. I talk about the Parasite in other parts of the video, but I made an extra slide because I want to go over just how awesome this guy really is. So he's going to cost you 80 points and 1 to 2 CP every single time because you wouldn't be taking him otherwise. So sometimes you like to use this guy with Alien Cunning. He does get the 5 model obsec, which can be great for just deep striking, then using the stratagem to get 3d6 charge. It's a cool way you can steal the opponent's home objective. But the main reason why I like this guy is for the gestation sac. So gestation sac is what spawns the little rippers. You get D3 plus 1 rippers. The rippers come out in the shooting phase, and that's what's the key part about this guy is when you drop the rippers, like he's a small model that just a single model, I think it's a 40mm base, that just has to squeeze in somewhere in your opponent's deployment zone, and then in the shooting phase he's going to spit out the rippers, which don't need to be 9 inches away. So these things can not only creep up closer, but they're way harder to, you can't box them out. And that's what's going to get you behind enemy lines really, really easily. But yeah, the fact that he's so tiny, I get him in the corner of the map all the time to spawn those rippers, and then just get the behind enemy lines, and then the rippers are great at bad touching tanks. So the fact that they can get a little bit easier charge, you want to be careful because the whole point is usually I'll deep strike them out of line of sight if I can, just to sit there and soak up those victory points for the secondary. But if someone's got, a Plagueburst crawler sitting in the back or anything else, you can definitely go bad touch that. One big downside, which I don't know if this is an oversight, but it's kind of a bummer. He's only leadership 8, so this means if someone else takes interrogate against you, they can interrogate this guy specifically, and where I think every single other character in a whole entire Tyranid codex is leadership 10. It's a lot easier to roll an 8 than a 10 to get a free CP. Before we go on to the next tip, guys, it's costing me about 50 bucks a month to make you these videos. So right now my Patreon's only at about half of that, and I could really use your help just to at least break even. On top of that, look at these cool cards. Look at them, look at them, look at them. I'm giving these out on my Patreon. So I used to use little tokens, little poker chips that I'd have like a label maker and I'd write the different buffs on it. It was cheap, it was kind of tacky, but now I use these, and these things are badass. So just take the printout of an old land card, put it in a sleeve, and then you have clearly printed out buffs that you could put next to your unit. And this is not only to keep things easier for you, but it's a courtesy to the guy across the table from you who's taking time out of his day to play you. Next up, I want to talk about the Deathleaper and why this guy's actually so strong and why his points went up. So the main thing, this guy's now 120 points. I almost always take Alien Cunning unless I'm doing a super heavy OPSEC build. Alien Cunning is just going to be really good for stealing objectives. Main thing is that he can't be shot at if he's 12 inches away, so you can place him on a far away objective and like there's nothing your opponent can do about it unless he gets close. So the reason for his nerf is what people are doing with him is they use him with Leviathan. Usually with everybody freaking runs Leviathan for some reason because they don't know about Yorgamonger. But you hide him inside big packs of warriors. So he hides really well inside big packs of warriors. So no enemy strats can be used in combat while they're in combat with him. It's going to cancel and stop any actions. And then what this is huge for is for basically interrupt. He's also a very tanky boy. He's -1 to hit all the time. He's got a 4-up invuln and 7 wounds. It's not a thing to think about, though, that I'm really on the fence about this guy still, is that he does cost the same as 4 warriors. So his attack profile is 7 attacks at AP 3, damage 2. But again, the anti-interrupt is huge because the ABCs list, the always be charging, the downside to that, and that basically bites those people in the ass all the time, is the interrupt. The worst thing that can happen to you in 40k, if you want to lose a game really quickly, kill stuff during your own turn. That's what interrupt does. That's why it's 2 CP. It's hands down, it's the best stratagem in the game. And if it were 3 CP, I would still probably spend it. And what that's doing is you're going to charge, you charge one unit of warriors here, another unit of warriors here or something, and then one of them is going to get interrupted, the one you don't pick to go first. Now you can pick the one that doesn't have Deathleaper with them, they go first, and then you can't interrupt the other ones, so they'll also get to attack first. So for the alien cunning, he does compete with Parasite. It's just kind of an alternative way that you can use alien. You don't even have to take alien cunning. It's for the stopping stratagems. Another thing just to remember, if you're taking cranial feeding, he does have feeder tendrils, so those feeder tendrils will help you. If you can get an assassination on a sergeant with him, that's usually some VP right there. If you need to get that kill to proc the feeder tendrils, he does have a C because he is a lictor, so he can reroll wounds for 1 CP. So now we got to talk about all the thropes, because the thropes got such good treatment. Starting with the leader of the thropes, the Neurothrope. This is your safest warlord choice. So if you're not taking a Hive Tyrant, you don't have to make the Hive, then like you can pick who you want to be the warlord. So usually giving this guy direct guidance to give that +1 to hit, that's the way most people go. Whenever you play Tyranids, you're always going to want to make sure you have 2 Psychers. One's going to be needed to cast Interrogate. Our secondary game is not that good. It is the biggest weakness of Tyranids. You're going to need 1 to Interrogate, and 1 needs to cast Catalyst. Paroxysm and Onslaught, that's all just bonus, but that's the 2 things you need. So for Tyranids, the way that we're balanced to be not super oppressive in the meta is we have the best stat lines, we have the best offense, we have the best defense. Our units are absolutely crazy, but like I mentioned, our secondary game is weak. And that's why even though we're bigger and stronger than everything else out there, we can still lose games. So when I run 2 Neurothropes, I usually do one with Catalyst and Onslaught, and the other with Catalyst and Paroxysm. One thing a lot of people don't know about the Neurothrope, this dude's got the horn chitten keyword. He's got that big horn on his nose. The horn chitten keyword will let him do mortal wounds when he charges, and that is an amazing stratagem. I would do that every time someone gets close to your Neurothrope. If you think you're going to be charged, charge them first, do a bunch of mortal wounds. You can kill shit sometimes. Next up, we got the Venomthrope. This has become pretty much a staple in all non-Jorgamonger lists. So this is a really cheap unit that can absorb a lot of shots. Or if it doesn't absorb a lot of shots, it's going to become a nightmare for your opponent to deal with. So I used to just take the 3. I have changed to, whenever I run these guys, I almost always run a squad of 4. Gives me a really big bubble of -1 to hit. And the main thing is I'm trying to keep 1 alive. Such an amazing unit though to have turn 1, especially when you go second and just weren't able to hide everything. The main thing they've changed with this, guys, is the Venomthrope used to be really bad at everything. He always did the -1 to hit, but now the -1 to hit is just easier to apply. They're really good at melee. They give out a fight last, so this is our source of fight last. They do mortal wounds to the things around them, and they have feeder tendrils, so make sure you're trying to get those sergeants with the Venomthropes when you use them. And that's why these guys are such a big deal if even a single one is left alive, because that single Venomthrope that your opponent failed to kill is not only giving you a nice little bubble of -1 to hit, but it's giving fight last, it's doing mortal wounds, and mortal wounds that's going to hurt anything in the game. So this becomes a very dangerous unit, especially when it's running around individually. So when I talk to new players that are new to Tyranids, this seems to be the unit that new players love. It is a gatekeeper unit. This is the unit you crush all your friends with that don't know how to play the game well. So these guys are very, very tanky, and part of the reason why they're so tanky is because of the fact that they can sit so far back. You don't really need to get close to the combat, and that means you pretty much have to be dealt with range. And their 4-up invuln means 50% of the range that's shot at them is you're not going to do anything. So hopefully your opponent's wasting melt-to-guns and things at them, because these dudes are tanky. And that's, but they're not invincible, so I always take these guys down a flank. So you're going to want to stick these dudes way on the left, way on the right side. That's going to make your opponent really have to go out of his way if he wants to deal with these. So this is an absolute staple unit if you're using big bug lists. So Carnifex, freaking love these things. You only get that 1 turn of 4-up invulns, but you time that right, and you can really cause problems for your opponent when none of your shit's dying. It might be one of the best Hive imperatives in the game. And when you stack it with the synapse, like say you got a Harpy in your Leviathan list, and you give him the 4-up invuln from these guys, plus his synapse, which makes him have transhuman, that thing becomes hard to take down. So the way you want to use your imperatives is, if you go first, First turn, you're going to want to use the 4-up invuln. If you're going second and most of your army's hidden, then you're going to want to go with the exploding 6s from a Tyranid Prime at range. And then on turn 2, you want to use the 4-up invuln. Don't waste your 4-up invuln when most of your army's hidden. Don't expect things bad to happen when they're not going to. The 4-up invuln is for when you first reveal your army and there's a lot of your opponent's guns that are still alive. So the reason why this guy's so good with new players is if you don't know what the fuck you're fighting, this dude's amazing because he counters everything. Even if you're a good player and you know, I don't even know every single army's rules back of my hand, but I do know that Mortal Wounds kills everything. So if you have your crazy meta unit and the Games Workshop fucked up on the rules for this and it's way too overpowered, it still dies to freaking Mortal Wounds. This video is running a little bit long and I have so many tips I want to give you guys. Make sure you join up to my brand new Discord because it's a super active Discord. We go over Tyranid stuff all the time. You'll love it there. The link's down in the description. But I'm just gonna rapid fire some tips off at you. So here we go. Starting off with, whenever you use a Turbo Mama, always give her the Maw Claws. This makes the Turbo Mom into the Turbo Nom. Like, she will destroy shit. She gets the extra attacks, well, she has the sweeping attacks. This brings her up to 10 attacks that I believe are damage to. Don't quote me, I believe they're damage to. But yeah, she wrecks shit. For you old Chronos fans who love to use the Symbiostorm on your Exocrines, the Exoscrin can still do double exploding 6s. You use the Tyranid Prime imperative, and then you use the CP to give exploding 6s to the Exocrin. So once he's ignoring cover, like, you can remove a dangerous enemy very quickly with this guy. And I know he's expensive, but this combo is what does make him worth it. He deletes shit. For those of you trying to decide how to kit your Carnifex, the best Carnifex kit is the Crushing Claw, the Venom Cannon with the enhanced senses. Leave it at that. Next, second best is the Screamer Killer. It assists with the Carnifex really well. It's slightly faster. It's very good at killing infantry, where the other one's very good at killing tanks, meaning whatever they run across, they can deal with it. So anytime that you use the Talons, I usually always go with the Adrenal Glands. I wrote Toxin Sacs here, which is another good one, but Adrenal Glands gives you that +1 strength, which is needed to deal with a lot more variety of units. If you don't have Crushing Claws, the big Scything Talons with a Venom Cannon is third. That's, as long as you did the Adrenal Glands, you're basically creating the anti-tank one. There are sometimes we wish you had Talons, or sometimes we wish you had Claws, but usually the Crushing Claws do win out. If you're new to Tyranids, like I mentioned before, the best way to learn is probably the Leviathan Warrior spam. Get on Tabletop Simulator if you want to try it out first. It's a very straightforward way to play, and newer people tend to do really well with it. So always try to include one Biovore in every list, at least one Biovore. So a Spore Mine can do so many cool things. Just having that Spore Mine, this thing can absorb a smite. This thing can move block big units like flyers or just anything that has a fat ass base. It can't land on top of it. You can use this thing to hit. You can use these to hit units behind a wall. Does damage in the movement phase when you move into people, which not very many things in this game does. And like I said, things like Satan, Abdomen the Destroyer, he's freaking annoying. And because of this, it stacks really well if you're using a Mawlock or Harpies just to do extra mortal wounds in that movement phase. Always bring a Biovore. So here's a trick that Death Guard players are probably familiar with, but in the Swarm, when you spawn extra models, these spawn during the command phase. Points are scored at the end of the command phase. So what you do is, if you're not on an objective but you need to be, you can spawn some models, and this not only works as a way to steal objectives from your opponent, but it also works as an oh shit button if you somehow took yourself off the objective. But you can secure that objective and then score your primary points. An important thing to remember when you're playing a Tyranids army, especially if you're new to Tyranids, the biggest strength of Tyranids is that our units are incredibly good at shooting and incredibly good at melee. You might look at Tyranids and say, oh, that would be a crazy melee army. That is not the case. We are a threat at every phase. We hurt you in the movement phase. We fuck you up in the psychic phase. We will shoot the shit out of you with living ammunition and then dice you to pieces in combat. And that is such a powerful combo because a lot of units are activating multiple times. The fact that your warriors are shooting all these shots from Death Spitters at this unit, killing them, and then immediately charging another unit to go kill them again. It's like taking 2 turns at once. This is part of what makes the Hive Tyrant himself just one of the most effective units in the game. Even though if he struggles a lot, he will shoot the shit out of you, he'll beat you in combat, and he's got 2 psychic spells. That's a Wombo combo. And make sure if you guys have any tips that you found that are awesome little combos that work well together, leave those down in the comments. My orc video, I got a lot of great combos that taught me a lot of things I wasn't even aware of, and this can be a great spot. Check the comments, guys, because you'll probably find some cool info down there. Now we're going over secondaries, because this is one of the most important things. When you build your list, before you build the list, you need to decide what secondaries am I going to go for in this list I'm about to make. If you're not doing that first, you're doing it wrong. So first up, I generally 90% of the time I take interrogate. This means, like I mentioned before, always making sure you have 2 character psychers. You can't cast interrogate, sadly, with Zoanthropes. So your next secondary, so you got your first secondary taken care of. Like that, you can just take every game. Now, next is no prisoners comes up the most, but you can't build for that, so that's stupid. That's a gimme when you get it. So that might make it so you don't need to take interrogate or something. Otherwise, behind enemy lines can be built for. So it's generally what I always try to do is the first thing I put in my list is, well, what's going to get me behind enemy lines, or what's going to get me retrieve Nephilim data, or what's going to get me engaged on all fronts. So next, you're hoping for bring it down. If you can't get bring it down, this is where it becomes a little tricky, because a lot of times your best option is to go cranial feeding, which is pretty hard to max. As a warning, warp ritual might seem easier on paper, but I'm telling you right now, the middle of the board is a bad place to be, especially if you're something like a Neurothrope. The middle of the board is where everything dies. So if you're okay with losing your psyker, take warp ritual, especially if you have a backup psyker that can cast it. But this one is dangerous. If you do go warrior spam, or you just have a lot of synapse units like some Leviathan lists do, synaptic insight, where you kill things in melee with synaptic units, that's another really good one to choose. You got to use your head about this, because it's not 100% back, but I'd say about 95% of your games, get a pen and paper ready, but you're going to be taking interrogate, no prisoners, behind enemy lines, cranial feeding, or bring it down. Some lists can go into synaptic insight. Those are your main ones. Again, interrogate, no prisoners, behind enemy lines, cranial feeding, bring it down. Don't go for things like grind them down. I see grind them down will bite you in the ass almost every single time. The other ones are pretty much traps. If you've seen my other videos on list building, when it comes to 40k, I do consider list building to be one of my strongest assets. The main thing that I always focus on is stacking certain defense profiles or certain types of profiles. For example, if I decide I'm going to go a big bug list, I don't take any small bugs, because I don't want any of your anti-infantry weapons to hurt me. Therefore, I've nullified, if it took 500 points of anti-infantry and I took no infantry, well, it's 1,500 points versus 2,000 now. Sucks to suck. As well as vice versa. If I take infantry and I'm going to go gaunts, I don't want anything in my army that a meltagun can threaten. I want meltaguns shooting at low model or low wound units. So these are your main list archetypes. You can totally mix and match different ones, but if you really want to min-max an army, this is the different styles of play that Tyranids have. So starting off with the old school crusher. Old school crusher is where you use the Heradules and you use the Thymocharon, and it's all just the biggest bugs in Tyranids. These guys still have play. You can run these as Jormungadur, and you can deep strike that Scythe Heradule for 1 CP, pop him up, give him Shard Lure, and bam, he's just in combat wrecking shit. You can also really intimidate your opponent with how big your models are. It's nowhere near as powerful as Crusher used to be, and is definitely the weakest out of these archetypes, but it's still playable. And obviously your monsters are running around as 5 model obsec. So the next list archetype is going to be the Gaunt spam. So this is where you're taking 60 to 90 Gaunts and 1 to 3 Turbomamas. And basically you're just pushing up with such a thick horde that your opponent can't get the objectives even if he wanted to. Say on average, as long as you don't do something stupid to get the Turbomama killed, you should get about 25 to 30 Gaunts back per game if you used it right. So next, this is the one I run the most. This is my favorite one. Is the Carnifex. This is running as many Carnifex as you can. And no, I don't mean running 16 Carnifex. You're just going to give up, bring it down. Be mindful of your opponent's secondaries too. I found the magic number is about 6 to 7. That doesn't give up too many points too easily and lets you diversify your list enough that you can tackle things on other angles. But Carnifex are amazing right now, especially with the Jormungandr -1 to hit and the OBSEC. So another one that's still playable is your Nidzilla list. So this is focusing on everything that's T8. So Tyranifex, Exocrines, Hive Walkerins, Maleceptors are amazing in this list, especially with their psychic action to lower the strength. The concept of the Nidzilla list right now, though, is to really maximize on that T8. Having a single T7 model, unless it's something like a Mawlock, can really hurt your archetype, because suddenly multi-meltas are a lot more efficient against you. So even Carnifex, I don't believe belong in this list. You really are trying to mimic a knight army, but on a budget. So then there's the most popular, you'll see in most tournaments, and it's going to be your Warrior spam. So this is probably where I recommend any new people to Tyranids to start off with. Get some Warriors. So the downside is Warriors are really expensive, so you might want to talk to your buddy who does 3D printing or something, because last I checked, 3 Warriors is $50 freaking from Games Workshop, and that's ridiculous because you're going to need 2 squads of 9 of these and probably at least a squad of 3. This is probably the easiest to play of all the different archetypes, because just your existence of having transhuman on all these warrior bodies is basically doing what Deathwing do, but again on a budget. You shoot way better than a Deathwing Terminator does, and you melee way better than a Deathwing Terminator does. So altogether, you're cheaper and you're better than a Deathwing Terminator. So start collecting those warriors now, and I'm telling you, so I played Tyranids for close to 20 years now, and my warriors have had their arms ripped off so many times. But that's the thing, is warriors have been in my list as long as I don't remember a time where I've not used warriors unless I'm really trying to stick to Gaunts, and even then I usually take 3 just for the synapse. So this one's not really an archetype, but we also have the Harpy build. This is Leviathan. You take the one Harpy with Synapse and the other Harpy with the 4-up Inbomb. Just dive bomb them. You have all kinds of utility with this list. It hits like a freaking freight train. It's not the best. It's much better when it goes first. But going second, like a Harpy is not exactly the hardest thing to kill, and it can be seen from most things. So if you're fighting, you just so happen to fight 3 hammerheads plus long striker, like it's not going to go well. But this is one of the strongest units in all of Tyranid Codex. The Harpy just wins games by itself. Well, and its buddy. Now we're going over the Tyranid adaptive traits. So these are the traits that you take with your whatever Hive Fleet you are, or if you're a custom Hive Fleet, you take 2. So starting with the best one, which is Lurk. So Lurk is only accessed by Behemoth, Kronos, and Jormungandr. So the best one out of Lurk is probably natural camo. I mean, natural camo is going to give all of your things in cover +1 cover save. So this means 2+ save warriors. Those are Terminator freaking warriors. Combined with the Jormungandr, they're also usually going to be -1 to hit. But this is how you get that 0+ save Tyrant Guard and Pyrovores that are impossible to remove. The next best one out of Lurk is going to be Territorial Instincts, which gives you OBSEC on all monsters. So Carnifex become 1 model OBSEC, and anything that's 10 wounds or more becomes 5 model OBSEC. So this is absolutely huge for things like the Mawlock, who can pop up right next to a unit and just say, "This is mine now." Next we have the Hunt. So Synaptic Goading is very, very good if you're spamming endless swarm units. So that's the 6-inch pre-game move. It does suck that that's not going to work on some of the maps, but the fact that 6-inch pre-game move is absolutely gigantic, especially when you're playing a swarm army. You combine it with that stratagem, that lets you regenerate endless swarm models, and that'll let you creep onto objectives before points are even scored. So heightened reflexes is another one. So Tyranids can build really shooty armies, especially if you tend to go a more Gaunt heavy build. You tend to favor a more shooty style Tyranid list. The fallback and shoot at -1, that can be really, really clutch. If you're using really big units, 30 squad Gaunts or 9-man warriors, it becomes really crucial to have something like this. A great one too, if you've ever played Space Wolf, played against a good Space Wolf player, Heroic Interventions army wide is nasty. So you can set up all kinds of crazy plays if you can see the forest through the trees. It's going to take a lot of practice and you have to have a lot of experience with the game, but you can set up all kinds of things where if the enemy falls back, he's going to fall back to a point where he's just going to get heroically intervened again, and you can just trap people. Before you leave, make sure you check out my new Discord server. Its link's going to be down in the description. We've got a ton of people that have joined. It's a great place if you're new to the game, if you're a veteran of the game. You can get help on just about anything, any question that you might have. We got a great community of people started. I plan to have a giant group of people for when Darktide comes out, and it's going to be awesome. And like I mentioned, please check out my Patreon. My channel is small, and right now I'm not even breaking even on what it costs to bring you these videos and just the subscription crap I gotta do. It would be so awesome if you could help me break even, or even help me get a better microphone, because right now I'm just using my headset. And my headset is broke so many times, it's covered in like 3 inches of tape on each side. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. Make sure you subscribe, because I got 3 awesome videos coming out soon, including how to do player place terrain, all kinds of tips and tricks for the charge phase and fight phase. Otherwise, if you guys don't subscribe, my next video is going to be a Tau video. Peace out, and may your dice always roll 6s.